Hello, friends. We first have a message from our friendly sponsors. What if your ordinary house cat had an extraordinary secret? Susan thought Tucker was just a regular cat until he introduced her to Cat City, a magical world beneath her house. Now she's caught in an adventure where the stakes couldn't be higher. In The Rat King, the second book in the Adventures of Susan and Tucker series by Patty Larson, Susan's bad dreams turn out to be real. Kidnapped by enemies, it's up to Tucker, stuck in Cat City and facing the Rat King's forces, to rally the cats and save his best friend before it's too late. Packed with mystery, adventure, and heartwarming moments, The Rat King is perfect for readers who love daring heroes and thrilling twists. Find it wherever you buy your books. And don't forget to tune in to the Rat King podcast to experience the story in a whole new way. Follow the link in our show notes to learn more. Hello, I'm Sheryl, and welcome to Sleep Tight Relax, a cozy bedtime podcast made especially for kids, but perfect for dreamers of all ages. In tonight's story, Kay and Gerda are best friends who love spending time in their rooftop garden. But when a piece of a magic mirror gets stuck in Kay's eye and heart, it changes how he sees the world, making him cold and distant. The Snow Queen takes Kay to her icy palace, promising him perfection, but keeping him away from love and warmth. Gerda refuses to give up on her friend. She sets off on a brave journey through snowy forests and meets kind helpers along the way. When she finds Kay, her friendship and their memories together melt the ice in his heart. The Snow Queen, touched by Gerda's courage, lets them leave and gives them a magical snowflake as a gift. Kay and Gerda return to their garden, stronger and closer than ever, ready to face anything together. Before we listen to our story, let's get cozy and comfortable. Find a position where your body feels relaxed and at ease. You can close your eyes if that feels nice, and let's take a few deep belly breaths together. Breathe slowly through your nose, feeling your belly rise, and gently breathe out through your mouth. Focus on your breath. If any thoughts pop into your mind, imagine placing them on a fluffy cloud and letting them drift away. Take a few more deep breaths. Continue practicing your belly breaths as long as you like while we share our story, Kay and Gerda. In a bustling town filled with tall buildings and crowded streets, two little children found their own magical world high above the rooftops. Kay and Gerda were best friends, spending almost every moment together. Their homes were in neighboring attics, and between their two windows stretched a tiny garden of wooden boxes. These boxes overflowed with vibrant roses and pea vines that twirled and climbed, creating a fragrant archway of flowers. The garden felt alive, as if it shared their secrets and laughter. It became a sanctuary where their imaginations could roam free. The rooftop garden was more than just plants and flowers. It was their kingdom. They would crown themselves rulers, using daisy chains and crowns, and pretending the pea vines were enchanted forests. Every corner of the garden held a story. The rose bushes were home to tiny fairy families, and the wooden boxes were castles, guarded by brave ants on patrol. Kay and Gerda would spend hours crafting tales of adventure, their laughter ringing out like music above the city noise below. The view from their attic windows was breathtaking. Chimneys puffed out smoke like gentle dragons, and the rooftops stretched out like waves of a tiled ocean. They would lie on their backs at night, watching the stars twinkle above, dreaming of distant lands and incredible journeys. The city's hum faded into the background, replaced by the magic of their shared world. Even on rainy days, the gentle patter of water on the glass became a melody, inspiring them to create new adventures indoors. In the summer, Kay and Gerda would sit among the roses, letting the warm breeze carry their giggles into the open sky. The garden became their private world, where every petal and leaf seemed to shimmer with life as if they were part of the children's games. They would weave crowns from the daisies and imagine grand adventures, their voices blending harmoniously with the rustling leaves. The sun bathed everything in golden light, and for those precious moments, the world outside their rooftop kingdom ceased to exist. When winter arrived, their windows were frosted over with intricate patterns that looked like secret maps. Kay and Gerda would warm coins on the stove and press them to the glass, creating tiny, perfect circles to peer through. They would wave at each other through these makeshift portals, their eyes sparkling with the shared delight of their small ritual. Even as the snow fell thick and fast outside, the rooftop garden held on to its magic, reminding them that their bond could brighten even the coldest days. One winter evening, as snowflakes swirled like tiny dancers, Kay's grandmother told them a story. "The snowflakes are white bees," she said, her voice full of mystery. "And they have a queen who flies through the skies on wintry nights, painting icy flowers on windows." "Can she come inside?" Gerda asked, her big eyes wide with curiosity. Kay puffed out his chest. "If she does, I'll just tell her to leave us alone." His grandmother chuckled, patting his head, and began another story. This one was about a kind queen who lived in a palace made entirely out of ice. Her castle glimmered like a jewel under the northern lights, and she was said to paint the skies with colors on cold winter nights. The children listened with wide eyes, their imaginations weaving vivid pictures of shimmering halls and swirling snow. That night, as Kay peered through his frosted window, he thought about the queen from the story. Snowflakes danced outside like tiny stars falling from the sky. Suddenly, one snowflake, larger than the rest, landed on the sill and began to grow. To his amazement, it transformed into a woman draped in glittering white, her cloak shimmering like frost on a window pane. Her eyes sparkled like stars, but held a distant, mysterious sadness. She raised her hand in a gentle wave, and a strange shiver ran through Kay's heart, half fear and half wonder. Spring arrived, melting the snow and bringing back the warmth of their rooftop garden. The roses bloomed brighter than ever, and Gerda sang a hymn she had learned, her voice like sunshine. "The rose in the valley is blooming so sweet," she sang, "and angels descend there the children to greet." Kay joined in, their voices twining like the vines around them. But one day as they played, Kay suddenly stopped and rubbed his eye. "Something feels strange," he murmured, blinking rapidly. Gerda hurried over, her face full of concern, but she couldn't see anything unusual. What neither of them realized was that a shard from a magic mirror created long ago by a mischievous spirit had slipped into Kay's eye and heart. The mirror had been crafted to distort all that it reflected, turning beauty into ugliness and joy into despair. Over time, fragments of this cursed mirror scattered across the world, sowing discord wherever they landed. The shard in Kay's eye now tainted his view of the world, while the one in his heart chilled his feelings, making even the warmest moments seem distant and flawed. Slowly, his bright view of the world began to change. The roses that once made him laugh now seemed dull and crooked. Instead of tending to their garden, Kay yanked the flowers from their boxes, frustration clouding his face. Gerda stood nearby, confused and worried, unable to understand what had happened to her friend. As winter returned, Kay seemed to change in ways that left Gerda feeling puzzled and concerned. His bright, warm smile faded, replaced by a quiet intensity that made him seem far away, even when he was right beside her. He spent hours studying snowflakes through a magnifying glass, fascinated by their intricate patterns. "They're perfect," he would whisper, his eyes fixed on their tiny, frozen beauty. When Gerda pointed out their roses, still holding a touch of summer's glow, he dismissed them with a wave of his hand. "The snowflakes are better," he said, "perfect and unchanging." His once joyful games turned into solitary pursuits. He built towers of snow, only to knock them down with a sharp laugh. And his humor grew biting, his words carrying an edge that stung more than the winter air. Gerda tried to remind him of their shared stories and adventures, but Kay would shrug her off, lost in his thoughts. "Don't you see?" he said one day. "The world is full of flaws. Only the snowflakes get it right." Despite her growing sadness, Gerda never stopped trying to reach him. She brought him little treasures from their garden, a dried rose petal, a smooth pebble. But he barely glanced at them. Each time, her heart ached a little more, as though a barrier of ice was forming between them. The rooftop garden, once their magical kingdom, now felt quiet and lonely. Still, Gerda held on to hope, believing that the Kay she knew was still there somewhere beneath the frost. One frosty afternoon, Kay spotted a large, elegant sleigh in the town square. A figure wrapped in a fur cloak sat at the reins, their face hidden by the hood. Intrigued, Kay tied his small sled to the grand sleigh and held on tightly as it began to glide. The sleigh moved faster and faster, carrying him out of the town and into the snow-covered countryside. Kay felt a strange excitement mixed with unease as the figure turned and pulled back their hood, revealing the Snow Queen's icy, serene face. She smiled, a distant kindness in her eyes. "I felt your sorrow through the shard," she said softly. "It calls to me, as do all the pieces of the mirror. They belong to my world, a world of calm and clarity, but also of solitude. Her words hung in the frosty air, both soothing and chilling. "Come with me and I will show you the perfection you seek," she continued, her voice like the whisper of the wind. Kay, entranced by her presence and the promise of something greater, found himself unable to resist as the sleigh carried him further into the snowy expanse. She smiled, not unkindly, but her eyes held a coldness that sent a shiver through him. "Come under my fur," she said, wrapping him in a soft cloak that sparkled like frost in the moonlight. Her touch was cool, yet strangely comforting, and a serene calm began to settle over Kay. As the sleigh glided into the night, the world below transformed into a blur of white forests and shimmering lakes. The moon hung high above, its silver light dancing across the snow. At first, Kay felt uneasy, glancing back toward the town he had left behind. But the Snow Queen's gentle voice broke through his thoughts. "The world is so much bigger than you've seen," she said, her tone almost wistful. "I will show you wonders you cannot imagine." As they flew on, she pointed out shapes in the snow. A sleeping bear curled under a frosted tree, a frozen waterfall glittering like a wall of diamonds, and great snowy owls soaring silently alongside them. The journey felt endless, yet dreamlike. Kay's worries began to fade as he became mesmerized by the strange beauty around him. They passed through valleys where the snow glowed faintly blue, and across frozen rivers that looked like glass. Once, they soared above a village buried in snow, its rooftops peeking out like little islands in a white sea. The Snow Queen spoke of how winter shaped the world, her words painting an image of peace and stillness that made Kay's heart feel strangely light. Finally, in the distance, the Snow Queen's palace began to take shape. Its icy towers seemed to rise straight into the sky, catching the light of the stars and reflecting it back in a dazzling display. The sleigh slowed as they approached, and the Snow Queen turned to Kay with a soft smile. "Welcome to my home," she said. "Here you'll see the beauty of the cold and the quiet." Kay stared in awe, his breath visible in the frosty air as the towering gates of the palace opened to reveal an enchanting world of ice and light. Meanwhile, Gerda refused to believe that Kay was gone forever. She remembered the warmth in his smile and the kindness in his heart. Gathering her courage, she decided to find him. Her journey began with the roses in their rooftop garden. She knelt beside them, her hands clasped. "Do you know where Kay is?" she whispered. To her astonishment, the roses seemed to nod, their petals brushing against her hands. "Go to the river," they seemed to say. Gerda felt a flicker of hope and set off, her heart full of determination and love. The river's gentle currents carried her in a little wooden boat, rocking her softly as if it understood her mission. Along the way, the reeds by the shore whispered encouragement, their rustling voices blending with the babbling water. Birds swooped low, their songs weaving a melody of hope, and the golden light of the sun reflected on the rippling surface, guiding her forward like a warm beacon. As the day wore on, she met a crow with bright, curious eyes. He perched on a branch above her and cawed. "I know of a palace where a clever boy was seen not long ago. Perhaps he is your friend." Gerda's heart soared. She thanked the crow and followed his directions, her steps light with anticipation. But when she arrived, the boy was not Kay. Instead, she found kind strangers who offered her food and a warm place to rest before continuing her journey. Her path led her through an enchanted forest where the trees seemed alive, their branches swaying as if bowing in greeting. The forest whispered to her in its own language, with the wind through the leaves, forming soft musical notes. Gerda paused, listening carefully, and heard fragments of wisdom woven into the sounds. "Courage will guide you," the whispers seemed to say, "and kindness will light your way." As she continued, she noticed small animals watching her from the underbrush. A fox with fiery fur crossed her path, its golden eyes locking with hers briefly, as if encouraging her to stay strong. Further along, a cluster of birds chirped a cheerful tune, reminding her of the power of hope. Each encounter seemed to bolster her spirit, making her steps feel lighter despite the snowy ground. By the time she left the forest, Gerda felt different. The gentle reminders from nature and its inhabitants had strengthened her resolve and reminded her of what mattered most: her unwavering love for Kay and the belief that she could bring him home. Gerda marveled at the sparkling frost that coated their leaves, transforming the forest into a shimmering wonderland. She befriended robbers who, though rough at first, softened at the sight of her determination and shared their stories by a crackling fire. They even gave her sturdy boots for the snowy plains ahead. As she pressed on, Gerda encountered a reindeer with a coat as white as snow and eyes that glimmered with kindness. "Climb on my back," he said. "I will take you to the Snow Queen's palace." Gerda hesitated, but the reindeer's gentle assurance gave her courage. She held tightly to his warm fur as he carried her across frozen fields that stretched endlessly under the pale blue sky. The journey was long, but Gerda's resolve never wavered. Finally, the snowy plains gave way to an icy fortress that rose like a crystal dream against the horizon. The Snow Queen's palace shimmered with otherworldly light, its towers reaching into the heavens. Gerda dismounted and took a deep breath, her determination shining brighter than ever as she stepped forward into the frosty air. Finally, Gerda reached the Snow Queen's palace. The grand towers of ice shimmered under the pale light, casting rainbows across the frosty plains. The gates creaked open with a sound like a whispering wind, and Gerda stepped inside, her breath catching at the sight before her. The walls sparkled like 1,000 diamonds, reflecting and refracting light in every direction, creating a dazzling dance of colors. Great pillars of ice spiraled upward, each carved with intricate patterns of snowflakes and stars. The air was still and cold, wrapping around her like a quiet song. In the center of the grand hall, Kay sat on a frozen throne, his eyes blank and his posture unmoving. Around him, the floor was a mirror of ice, so clear it seemed to stretch endlessly into the depths below. "Hey," Gerda called, her voice trembling with both hope and fear as she ran toward him. Her footsteps echoed faintly, the sound swallowed by the icy silence, At the sound of her voice, something stirred in Kay. Gerda's warm tears fell on his chest, but it was her voice, steady and filled with love, that truly broke the spell. She spoke of their adventures, the stories they had created together, and the garden that had once been their kingdom. As her words reached him, memories began to flicker in Kay's mind. The laughter, the sunlight, the roses they had tended side by side. Slowly, the ice around his heart cracked, and warmth began to seep back in, melting the frozen hold of the Snow Queen's magic. Slowly, he blinked, and his eyes softened. "Gerda?" he whispered. The Snow Queen appeared, her expression carrying a quiet sorrow. "I never intended to cause harm," she said gently, her voice as soft as the falling snow. "I wanted to share the beauty of my world, to show its peace and stillness. But I see now that a world without warmth can be lonely, and beauty means little without love to share it. You reminded me of something I had forgotten, the power of a caring heart." Gerda turned to the Snow Queen, her voice filled with gratitude. "Thank you for letting him go," she said. The Snow Queen stepped closer, and her icy demeanor softened. "Take this," she said, holding out a delicate snowflake that sparkled like a jewel. "It will never melt, a reminder of this moment and the beauty that exists in both warmth and cold. May it guide you as you return to your world." With a gentle smile, she watched as Gerda and Kay walked away, her gaze lingering as if she, too, had been changed by their love and determination. As they returned home, many months had passed since Kay had been taken. The harsh winter had melted into a gentle spring, and signs of life were everywhere. The rooftops were no longer blanketed in snow, but dotted with blooming flowers, and the air carried the sweet scent of renewal. Once buried under frost, their little garden had come alive again, a vibrant symbol of the time that had gone by and the hope that had endured. The snow had melted into glistening streams, and the rooftop garden, once buried under winter's icy touch, now burst with life. Roses unfolded their petals in vibrant shades of red and pink, and the pea vines stretched eagerly toward the sun. The air smelled fresh and sweet, a gentle reminder of renewal and hope. Kay and Gerda stepped onto their familiar rooftop, marveling at how their little kingdom had come back to life. The roses seemed brighter, their petals opening as if reaching toward the sunlight, and the pea vines stretched higher than ever, swaying gently in the warm breeze. Their journey had changed them, and now their garden felt like a reflection of their own hearts, filled with growth and renewal. Kay knelt beside one of the rose bushes and touched its delicate petals. "It feels like everything has changed," he said softly, his voice tinged with wonder. Gerda crouched beside him, her fingers brushing the leaves. "Maybe we've changed too," she replied, smiling. Kay looked at her, his eyes now warm and bright. "Thank you for finding me," he said quietly. They sat together under the arc of vines, the garden alive with color and life. As the sunlight streamed down, they began to weave new stories, each one filled with the lessons they had learned, that courage and love could melt even the deepest cold, and that together they could face anything. Their bond, now stronger than ever, was a reminder of how far they had come and all the adventures yet to be written. If you're still awake, it's the perfect time to whisper something kind to yourself. Take a deep breath and in your mind or in a soft voice, say these gentle words. When I work together with others, we can solve any problem. Every day, I grow stronger, wiser, and kinder. With patience and determination, I can overcome anything. My love and kindness have the power to make the world a better place. I am safe, loved, and ready to dream of wonderful things tonight. I am calm, relaxed, and peaceful. Good night. Sleep tight.